Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another of Ironside's Take30s. This morning, we're talking about AWS's Quick Suite, which is, as the title page says, a new era of BI sort of taking over for QuickSight. We're going to talk about some of the changes and some of the stuff that we found most useful. So we've been working in the data and analytics area for 25 years. We've helped lots of people solve their data and analytics problems. We are an AWS advanced tier partner. We have competencies in generative AI and data and analytics. We also do a lot of work in migrating data and analytics. If you have BI that needs to go to QuickSight, give us a call. So we've been working with AWS for over 6 years, but we've been an advanced tier partner for 6 years. And we've got offerings in data strategy, business intelligence, data science, data engineering, and managed services. One of the nice things today is that what we're talking about covers a lot of those areas. There's everything from data strategy all the way through to data engineering, with BI and data science in the middle, that gets touched on by these new capabilities of Quick Suite. So we're going to talk quickly about what changed. If you are a daily QuickSight user, you've probably seen the changes. This will be going live the day those changes also go live. If you haven't logged into QuickSight in a couple of days, you may want to go take a look because it looks a little different. And we're going to talk about a couple of the new things in there. Spaces, which lets you combine your QuickSight structured data with unstructured data that you upload or connect to from S3 or other data storage locations. And then Research Agent, which lets you do deep analysis on data. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Marissa, who's going to talk about the QuickSight to Quick Suite transition and take it from there.
Thanks, Jeff. So as he mentioned, the capabilities in QuickSight haven't changed at all. As you can see on the left-hand side of the menu, you still have all the same functionalities and capabilities as before, just with a little bit of a different look and feel and a few kind of small upgrades to the interface. So as you can see, now there's kind of a true home page, whereas before in QuickSight, it would just default to the analyses page. There wasn't an actual landing page. And with the new homepage, there's a recents list that has copies of, all the objects you work on frequently. And so if there's something you're regularly opening, you don't have to, navigate through the menu options. You can just click to it right from this recents list. And so another nice little upgrade that was added for the homepage is you can actually pin visuals as tiles to your homepage from your dashboards. So you can pick a few visuals from different dashboards, the same dashboards, whatever makes sense to you. And so you can do that by navigating into your dashboards. And as you can see here, hovering over the visuals and the metrics you want to pin, clicking the home button, and they will show up on your home page underneath the recents list as tiles. And then you can kind of resize and adjust and, organize the tiles however you want and for what makes sense to you. The only limit is that you can only have 4 tiles and no more than that. So, just be conscious of what metrics you are selecting and, make sure they're the most important ones. So this can be helpful if you're someone who doesn't really need to be in the weeds of dashboards on a daily basis and are just tracking a few key metrics. You can just look at the bottom of your homepage and have the important numbers you need to see right there. And in terms of the theme, if you are not a fan of the new theme attached to AWS's like heads up email on the change, there's a document that walks through how to maintain and revert back to the classic theme of blue and white if you would rather stay with the old school QuickSight theme. All right, so now that we kind of covered the minor changes to QuickSight, we'll go into Spaces and My Assistant. So now that you've kind of familiarized yourself with the updated platform and where, the new QuickSight features are, once you have all your QuickSight objects built, you can start leveraging them in this new feature called Spaces. So Spaces are basically a centralized location where you can upload files from your computer, bring in data, whether it's structured or unstructured, as well as objects built in QuickSight into these kind of custom centralized knowledge centers that are related to important and specific business topics. So an example could be like having a financial space that contains data on sales and revenue, or maybe an HR space that has something like an employee handbook. Those are examples of where you can use spaces and then have your employees leverage those in the chat agent. So like Jeff mentioned, it brings together structured and unstructured data as well as objects built in QuickSight. One thing to note with that is the QuickSight objects, it has to be either a published dashboard or a topic. You cannot use a data set or an analysis. So if there's a specific data set you want, just make sure that it's published in a dashboard. And then once you have a space built out, you can actually start asking questions against it with the new My Assistant chat agent, which is kind of the default built-in chat agent. And this kind of combination of spaces in My Assistant is very similar to Q Business. The idea is that it's just a little bit more accessible and easier to get to and allows you to bring together both structured and unstructured data in one spot. So next I'm just gonna quickly walk you through how to actually build a space, and then we're gonna go into a business use case. So building a space, you just wanna navigate to the spaces option on the left-hand side of the menu, click spaces, it'll bring you to the spaces homepage where you can then select create a space, and it'll bring you to the editing view. So here you wanna give your space a title and a description. So, make sure the title is concise, relevant, high level, gives the user an idea of what the space is and what it's for, and then maybe like 1 or 2 sentences in the detail box just about what information they can find in the space and what the purpose of it is. And then once you have the title and description, you can start adding what they call knowledge, which is essentially your data. So you can upload files from your computer or even use dashboards and topics like you can see I have here. So you can use PDFs, you can use Word documents, you can upload super structured tabular Excel files or, even Excel files that have really long sentences in the tables as well. And the space and the chat agent will be able to review all that and analyze it accordingly. So once you have all your knowledge and data loaded into the space, you can start asking questions against it using the My Assistant chat agent, which you can find in the top right-hand corner. Most of the time when you open up QuickSuite, that'll default to being open, but in the event it's not, it's just the purple button in the top right-hand corner, kind of where Q used to be in QuickSight. So once you open the chat, you just want to make sure that the appropriate space or data is selected for what you want to ask questions again. So at the bottom left-hand image, you can see the space that I've built is currently selected, but if it were not, you can click on that drop down and you can see by where the arrow is, there's a few different options you can choose from. So you can choose a different space, you can just choose a dashboard if you don't want to ask a question against the whole space. This just kind of helps to guide the My Assistant chat agent in what data it should be looking at. All right, so now we're going to kind of go into a quick business use case just to highlight, the benefits of combining spaces with the My Assistant. So for this use case, we're going to be looking at data from a fictional sports retailing store called Tim's. Kind of think of it as something similar to like a Dick's Sporting Goods. And so the goal is to identify our lowest rated product based on customer reviews and then identify some common complaints, which we can then make improvements about from those texts and those reviews that people make online. So identifying the lowest rated product in and of itself isn't super difficult. As you can see in my table, we can just create something where we sort the product by the rating from lowest to highest. But from there, if we want to understand, why it's getting low ratings, before someone would have to manually read through all those customer comments, all those reviews, you can see they're quite lengthy and would take a long time to get through all that and then summarize the key points and the key complaints. So with Spaces in My Assistant, you can get to those answers in a few short minutes rather than hours or maybe even days, depending on how many reviews there are. So I'm just going to walk through the conversation that I had with the chat agent to get these answers that I wanted. So I'm just going to start the conversation with a simple question, asking it about what my lowest rated product was last year. And so like less than 2 minutes later, you can see it not only answers my question which the answer is the electric cargo bike, but it also gave me some summarized bullet points on the main complaints that the bike received based on the reviews in the PDF document, which is considered the unstructured data that I uploaded into my space. So even just with this one question, you can see how quickly it got those details. So from there, we're just going to continue the conversation to see what else we can get. So now we have the idea of what the common complaints are. We want to figure out what some potential improvements are to, hopefully get some better customer ratings with this product. So we want to ask the agent what are some potential improvements, and you can see that they give a couple improvements for each kind of section, and they grouped it based on those original common complaints that they were seeing. So they gave you a couple different options. This way you can kind of choose what makes sense to you and your business, and it doesn't pigeonhole you into just one specific feature that needs improvement. So now that we have several different options from here, I kind of want to focus my attention a little bit more onto one specific area. So for the next question, we're going to ask the agent about some implementation strategies specific to the battery life and battery improvement. And so you can see that the agent is able to go into more detail specifically about how to improve the battery for the e-bike, kind of breaking it up into different sections and, giving you a lot of different options. So you can either implement all of these or, choose what makes sense to you. If you're not super familiar with e-bike batteries and how to make improvements, from here you can actually ask the chat agent to, rate which ones are most impactful. So I asked the agent what improvements would be the most impactful in relation to updating the batteries, since I'm not super familiar with e-bike batteries. So this way it kind of helps to organize them a little bit and gives you the highest impact improvements and then the medium high impact improvements. So that way we can say, all right, let's, move forward with just the highest impact improvements, and we'll worry about the medium ones later if this is something that we want to get the ball rolling on sooner rather than later. So now that we have the highest impact improvements, we want to look at the numbers and see, financially if doing them makes sense. So we can ask the chat agent to do a cost benefit analysis on how those high impact improvements would affect overall sales. And you can see it gets pretty detailed. It's obviously still kind of estimated and not as detailed and specific as a feature like scenarios. But for a 5-minute, 10-minute conversation, this, I would say, is super helpful to at least give you a general idea of what changes, like how those changes would affect your business financially. And, this could help if you're presenting the potential improvements to management to have some numbers and some financial data to back up the ideas and kind of give some justification behind them, even though they're still estimated. It's better than having nothing to back it up. And then to kind of round out the conversation after the cost benefit analysis, if it's decided that you guys want to move forward with those improvements based on the numbers, you can also ask the agent to put together an implementation timeline. And you can see the agent breaks it out into a few different phases and breaks it out even further into months and gives you a few bullet points to kind of help walk you through how and when to do these changes. So it makes it easy for you to understand how to efficiently and effectively roll out, these e-bike improvements. As you can see here, I have a video on the right, kind of going through the chat agent live, what we walked through in the previous slides, just so you can see how exactly it looks when you're having the conversation. And just to summarize everything we went over, Spaces and My Assistant are a great, powerful tool and combination because you're able to bring together your structured and unstructured data in addition to your QuickSight assets, and then ask some just natural language questions against the data with the chat agent. And so this can have an immediate impact on your day-to-day as you're able to get, meaningful and actionable insights on your data, and then answers to those business questions at a very, very quick pace and much more reasonable time. So a very powerful tool of combinations. And with that, I will pass it off to Lucinda for the deep analysis and research agent.
Thanks very much, Marissa, and great examples in the spaces and chat agent area. So this time we're going to talk about Amazon Quick Suite, the research agent capability. So the research agent can perform deep search across your documents and your data and the public internet, and it can deliver extensive multi-page research. So just in terms of a quick overview, you can upload your files, you can augment your search with internet search, you can point to specific quick site data and visualizations. The Quick Research Agent will give you an in-depth research plan, which you can modify, and then it'll start the research process. And then depending on the complexity of your research request, about an hour or so later, you'll get your report. So to illustrate this, let's look at an example of the fictional sporting goods store, Tim's, continuing along the line what Marissa started. So the data that we're going to be looking at is the weekly heartbeat of a retail operation. And you can see the green line there in the middle is the sum of all the departmental sales. And you've got all the different departments there listed on the right-hand side. And then below are the sales of the individual departments, which if you add them up, they add to the green one. So your manager may come in and say, hey, how's the economy impacting our sales by department and location? So if you were doing a full-on research on this, it could take days at the least and weeks of fact-finding, analysis, and writing to yield a 20-page report with recommendations. So instead of all that, you can use the research agent and do it in about an hour. Okay, going back to the Quick Suite homepage, you click on research on the left-hand side. And then you say, okay, your current research projects are listed there at the bottom. You click on new research in order to start a new project, which we'll do. And then this is where you really add the ingredients of what you want in your research. So we have a prompt and we say, do a financial analysis on sales by department, profitability, and by state. Look at economic conditions on the web and say how they might impact these aspects. So that actually is a pretty complex research ask. It's a lot of different dimensions to do almost a combinatorial explosion of different things to look at. You click on the web search button, so you keep that intact, and then also point to that sales quick site graph that is really the basis on which you want to be able to do the analysis. So the first thing it'll do is it'll give you a research plan, and you can see here it's pretty extensive. It starts with a financial analysis by sales, profitability, and geographic in context of economic conditions. So to look at sales performance by department, profitability and margin analysis, geographic sales distribution. It'll also look at current economic indicators and market conditions, correlation between economic factors and sales performance, and some sort of recommendations based on all this analysis. It also, on the right-hand side, asks you some questions in case you want to modify what you want to do. So it says that on the right-hand side, you may considering the following dimensions. Are there any departments you want to focus on? Is there a certain time period? Are there certain economic indicators that you're interested in, etc.? And so I just put in the modification of look at January through May 2025, look at the jobs reports to see if people feel like they can spend money. Hit revise plan, it'll give you a new plan, and then off it goes. So the interesting thing about this is that it actually does a very extensive analysis. This here, I'm going to do a few screenshots on this report because it is 20 pages long. It gives you financial analysis, and it gives you an executive summary and the key findings, and it'll have the key findings, it'll do implementation, etc. This particular one took about an hour, and it has really a comprehensive analysis and recommendations. I also want to note here that in terms of how it grounds its research, you can see citations. So there's citation 1, 2, and 3. I'll show you what citation 3 looks like in a little bit. So one of the good things that it does is that based on its research, it can build quick site style graphs and insert them into the report. And looking at this, it's looking at in section 5, the macroeconomic indicators. The U.S. economy was shown to grow at a certain rate, et cetera. There's your citation 3 there again. It's got these various indicators for what's going on in the economy: unemployment, inflation, the Fed's funds rate, the retail sales growth, consumer spending, GDP growth. All of these have, kind of bigger picture or smaller picture impacts on whether people are going to buy things or not. And so this is actually, if I was to redo my prompt, I would actually ask for specific graphs that would then be incorporated in the report. So another thing that was interesting was that even though I didn't ask for these things specifically, it included looking at inflation and the tariff impact. And so this was very valuable because, of course, inflation is going to have an impact on your on consumers and what they're willing to spend money on. And the tariff impact is definitely important if you look at what it does for supply chain disruption. That inventories get depleted, that retailers decide to accelerate shifts to sourcing away from heavily tariffed countries and ones that are more tariffed, or even shifting to U.S. based supply sources. And then it gives strategic recommendations, and strategic recommendations are really extensive. For example, here it looks at, based on the analysis that it did, it makes a finding that now high-income consumers account for about 50% of all spending, and retailers can really significantly expand their premium product offerings. It mentioned that in the report that the premium product departments tended to be doing fine in the current economy. So it gives recommendations such that Tim's may want to focus on curated premium collections and exclusive partnerships with the premium brands in order to bring those into the store, and they can sell them. The other thing is, on the other end of the budget concerns are private label engaging in private label development. And what this does is it makes it so that if there's a Tim's private label for certain types of departments, such as shoes, etc., that then now Tim's is only paying for the cost of the product and not paying for all the premium brand marketing that goes along with the other brands. And so it goes through this, different department by different department. It looks at private label. There's an entire section on e-commerce and omni-channel marketing, because if you're going to be, e-commerce actually is becoming a larger and larger portion of retail sales. And what would be the digital transformations that would need to be rolled out over time. Talks about the in-store experience and having community building events in order to make the customer experience more engaging and generate more loyalty. And as Marissa's did, it also shows the sequencing of these, starting with some quick win projects up front, and then, in the middle, the meaty middle, you have the digital transformation efforts that will then support the e-commerce strategy. So all this is in this entire, 19-20-page report. And it's, I wanted to also show a little bit about the citations. So here, as I mentioned, there was citation 3. If you click on citation 3, it will take you to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics report on the Consumer Price Index and tell you the data that's there, that's being cited, that the report upon which both citations and analysis are done within the deep research that's been conducted. So this is very helpful for building credibility. It also helps reduce hallucinations that might occur in the research process. So that is a kind of a little bit of a deep dive on one research agent use case. You can use these research agents pretty much wherever you need to do a deep dive. So I have 5 listed here, but if there's anything that you need to do that requires you to look at a lot of different options and do some detailed analysis and pull out recommendations and conclusions, the research agent can do that. So for example, here we've got market entry and expansion. These tend to be very analysis intense processes where you might be looking at a lot of different options and sharing and trading off pros and cons of different what paths forward for market entry and expansion of new products. Competitive intelligence, I didn't mention this, but within the entire research report, this also looked at Dick's Sporting Goods. It looked at the acquisition of Foot Locker and what would be the strategic implications to Tim's Sporting Goods on for sales, etc. As we mentioned, the tariffs are a part of supply chain risk, but normally you'd consider that anyway if you were just looking at your supply chain and trying to figure out which areas were less robust and building more of a just-in-case time supply chain instead of a just-in-time supply chain. You can do deep research on that. You can do M&A target analysis, and as we know, especially within M&A, the depth and the speed of analysis is very important to making good acquisitions, and this can be done to uncover risks early and eliminating options that might not be very promising. And finally, product innovation for product companies, looking at what are the trends, what's happening in your particular industry, looking at where new products have been announced and if it might be good for a company to do that, where to focus R&D, engineering, etc. So these are all different places where you can use the research agent. So in summary, it's a very powerful capability that's been introduced at QuickSight, and it gives you very detailed analysis that's extremely helpful, and it's incredibly easy to do. So those aspects make the research agent a really great feature within the Quick Suite set of options. Thanks. Now back to Jeff.
All right. Thanks, Lucinda. Just to sum up quickly, obviously the big headline is that Amazon QuickSight has now become Amazon Quick Suite, and you're already seeing those changes in your QuickSight account. There's a lot of new stuff in there. There's a lot of the same stuff in there. So QuickSight is still there the way it was, effectively unchanged. So none of your existing dashboards or analyses of data sets should be any different. But now you've got some new things. You've got Spaces, which, as Marissa showed you, lets you bring structured and unstructured data together. We've got Research Agent, which Lucinda showed, to do deep analysis of that data. And that's really a very different way of using LLMs to really take a lot of time and go out and do external research to combine that with the data that you have. And so that all of that together lets you leverage your QuickSight data sets and S3 data to generate new insights. Of course, you can use data that's not in S3. You can go out to other locations, but of course, you should always store your data in S3 because it's the best place. It's available now. It went live the same day that this video is being released. So whether you're watching it that day or in the future, Quick Suite is available. If you have any questions on this, because of course, when things change, sometimes there's configuration you're not sure how it works, or the questions about how to use some of the features, please reach out at the email address listed there. We'd be happy to talk to you about any questions that you have. And we have a couple questions,
Yes.
We're going to go through those.
So speaking of questions, did my best to kind of synthesize everything coming in from the chat chronologically here. So starting off with QuickSight and the new homepage. Someone's curious, how do the tiles know what selections to display?
Yep, I'll take that one. So the tile numbers are essentially based on your last selections in whatever dashboard they come from. So since QuickSight has persistence where it remembers the selections you made, whatever selections are there when you close out of the dashboard are what the tiles will show. So if you always want to look at the tiles as of a certain day, just you want to make sure that before you exit the dashboard, you kind of reset all your selections. Otherwise, it'll be stuck on whatever number you last were looking at in the dashboard.
The second question with respect to Quick Suite is just general pricing. Anything we can do to speak to that?
Yeah, so I can take that one. So we've been working through the beta of Quick Suite, and during the beta, of course, pricing is still up in the air. The pricing is being released the same day that Quick Suite is going live. That's the day this video is being released. But at the time of recording this video, we don't have access to the price list, so we don't know for sure. So as always with any cloud service, you should go check the price list and be aware of, extra costs that you might be incurring to make sure that you set up policies or, access levels so that people are, using things at the appropriate level. As with anything, if you leave something running or give a lot of people access, you will incur charges. The nice thing is because it's cloud-based and pay-as-you-go, you can always, turn them off as soon as you realize it's there. But definitely, we would encourage you to go to the QuickSite pricing page or now the Quick Suite pricing page and check that stuff out.
Another very important question from a managerial perspective would be, what do I need to know with respect to admin of the new Quick Suite?
So maybe we'll tag team this one, Marissa, because you know the QuickSite admin better. The new admin page combines the QuickSite administration with some of the unstructured, formerly Q for Business administration. So you're going to see many new options unless you've been using both of those things, but now you'll see it in one place and you can sort of coordinate it. There's definitely some new administration that you can do to manage these new services. So again, that may be something where you're welcome to reach out and ask us any specific questions that you have. Of course, there's AWS documentation, and your AWS rep can talk to you about it as well.
Yep. I mean, I think you covered it. And then I think, all the roles, assigning roles and stuff is kind of very similar where you can select admin, admin pro, that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
maybe different locations, but overall, generally the same.
Yeah, definitely.
So moving forward to spaces a little bit, could we just get a refresher on the type of unstructured data that's supported in spaces?
Yep. So you saw in the example that I did, I used a PDF. So you can use PDFs. You can use Word documents. You can use CSVs, Excel files, even though those are considered more structured. There might be tables where you have cells that have really lengthy text. So the data within the table might not necessarily be structured. So you can use stuff like that. Another interesting thing you can do is you can actually use audio files as well. And so say you want to upload the audio from a meeting, you can actually upload the video and the audio and it will automatically transcribe the audio. So that way you can ask questions of the summarized notes from the meetings. So that's kind of a quick high level of some unstructured data you can add.
And can we share the space with other people?
Yes, so you can share it with anyone who has access to Quick Suite. The only thing to note is just because you share the space doesn't mean they also have access to the QuickSite assets in it. So say you share the space, but you have a dashboard or a topic in there, you also want to share that with the users as well. So you have to go in and kind of do that separately to make sure they can access those objects too.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
go
ahead, Jeff.
And we have some best practices around that. That's the kind of thing that if you're starting with QuickSite or if you've been using it for a while and just want to know, hey, what's the best way to organize this in a sustainable way? That's something we're happy to help with.
But the bottom line is everything that Spaces accesses for its analysis, your users must also have permissions to access if they want to access the shared space.
Correct.
Okay, cool. And then moving on to chat. Is it now pulling information from the web as well, in addition to the shared documents?
Yep, so that's an option. You can actually kind of toggle it on and off if you want to in the chat box. There's it looks like a little browser like globe icon. And so it defaults to being selected if your administrator has allowed that as an option. So if you wanted to include web data in its search of your space, it'll do that. Otherwise, you can unclick it when you ask the question. It'll just look at explicitly the data you have in your space and it won't take anything online into account.
Okay. And then further along the lines of, unleashing an LLM on the world, what can we say about data safety, particularly like with the research agent, Lucinda? We're sharing a lot of internal data with the LLM. How can we ensure that it's not being trained on or, some bad actor is going to get their hands on it somewhere along the way?
Yeah, great question. So for just interacting with the LLMs and generative AI, the way that it's set up at Amazon is that this is your basically copy of it, and that no data is sent back to any foundation model makers. The other thing is that your data is protected by all the things that you expect AWS to do and that they do with all of your rest of your data, such as encryption at rest and in transit, IAM fine-grained access controls, including row-level security. So all the things that you've come to expect for Amazon and the cloud and how it protects your data also apply to all this in Quick Suite.
Great. Well, that's all we had from the chat. Maybe I'll hand it back to you, Jeff, for some final words.
Yeah, you bet. I mean, I think really this is a very big change to QuickSight, bringing in a lot of capabilities, and it's nice to see sort of things that were disparate and separate before in one place. So you get to manage access in one place, and you can combine those capabilities in ways that we've demonstrated today. So hopefully you guys find this as interesting and exciting as we did, and we look forward to hearing about all the interesting things our clients and customers are doing with it. So thank you very much for listening, and hope everyone has a great day.